Derek has always been the son I could count on, my mother said, raising her glass as if she were announcing something everyone in the room had always known. The laughter came first. Warm, easy, comfortable. The kind of laughter people share when they believe they're hearing a harmless family joke. I laughed too. At least, I think I did. After a while, you learn how to smile at things that hurt. My name is Ethan Carter, and for most of my life, I believed that if I worked hard enough, stayed patient enough, and loved my family enough, things would eventually balance out. That night taught me how wrong I was. It was my mother Helen's 75th birthday party. The banquet room overlooked a small lake just outside Columbus, Ohio. The evening sun reflected off the water, casting golden light across the white tablecloths. Family members filled the room. Cousins, neighbors, old friends. Everyone seemed happy. My brother Derek stood near our mother, wearing a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than my first car. He looked successful, confident, important. People naturally drifted toward him. They always had. I sat at a table near the back with my wife, Claire. She reached for my hand when my mother made her comment. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. We'd been married long enough for silence to have its own language. My mother continued speaking. Whenever I needed help, Derek was there. More applause followed. Derek lowered his head modestly, pretending to be embarrassed by the praise. I watched him carefully. The small smile at the corner of his mouth told a different story. He enjoyed every second of it. Maybe that moment wouldn't sound like much to an outsider. Maybe it would seem petty for a grown man in his 50s to care about a few words spoken at a birthday party. But those words weren't just about that evening. They represented decades. They represented every Christmas when Derek received expensive gifts while I got practical ones. Every family emergency where his mistakes became everyone else's problem. Every achievement of mine that somehow disappeared into the background. Growing up, Derek was the center of gravity in our family. Everything revolved around him. If he succeeded, we celebrated. If he failed, we rescued him. If he made poor choices, we found excuses. Meanwhile, I learned early that expectations worked differently for me. Nobody expected me to struggle. Nobody expected me to need help. Being responsible became my role. Being dependable became my identity. Somewhere along the way, I stopped noticing how unfair it was. The speeches continued. Family friends shared stories. Someone brought out a large 3-tier cake decorated with white roses. Cameras flashed. Glasses clinked together. Around me, the room buzzed with affection and nostalgia. Yet I felt strangely detached, as if I were watching someone else's family gathering through a window. Then my mother pointed toward Derek again. "I don't know what I'd do without him," she said. "He's always looked after me." I stared down at my coffee cup. It had gone cold nearly an hour earlier. Nobody noticed. Nobody remembered that I had spent the previous 6 months driving Mom to medical appointments after work. Nobody mentioned the weekends Claire and I spent repairing things around her house. Nobody talked about the countless phone calls, errands, and quiet responsibilities that never made for exciting stories. Those things weren't dramatic enough to remember. Derek raised his glass toward me. "Don't look so serious, little brother," he said with a grin. More laughter followed. I smiled politely. Claire squeezed my hand again. Across the room, my mother looked happier than I'd seen her in years. For a moment, I almost convinced myself none of it mattered. Then I noticed something. Derek wasn't looking at our mother. He was looking around the room, measuring reactions, collecting admiration, enjoying attention the way a man enjoys sunlight after a long winter. And suddenly, a feeling settled deep in my stomach. Quiet, uncomfortable, impossible to ignore. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't anger. It was recognition. For the first time, I realized this wasn't simply a story about favoritism. Something else was happening beneath the surface. Something bigger than old family wounds. Something that would eventually tear all of us apart. I should have walked away that night. Instead, I stayed. The drive home from the party was quiet. Claire kept her eyes on the road while the city lights drifted past the windows. She knew me well enough to understand that when something truly bothered me, I did not talk about it right away. I needed time. I needed silence. I needed to sort through the thoughts that piled up in my head like old boxes in an attic. When we finally pulled into our driveway, the porch light cast a soft circle across the lawn. Everything looked normal, peaceful, yet I carried an uncomfortable feeling I could not shake. That night, after Claire went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen with a cup of coffee. The house was completely still. I found myself thinking about Derek. Not the man everyone saw now, but the boy I grew up with. Looking back, the pattern had always been there. Derek was 2 years older than me. He was charming, outgoing, and naturally good at making people like him. Teachers liked him. Neighbors liked him. Relatives loved him. If Derek forgot a responsibility, people laughed it off. If I forgot something, it became a lesson about accountability. At the time, I never questioned it. That was simply how our family worked. When we were teenagers, Derek wrecked his first car. Nobody was hurt, thankfully. My mother spent weeks telling everyone how unfortunate the situation was. A few months later, she helped him buy another vehicle. When my old pickup truck finally died years later, I took extra shifts and paid for a replacement myself. Nobody offered assistance. Nobody even suggested it. Again, I accepted it. That was my role. Derek needed help. Ethan could handle it. The same thing happened with college. Derek changed majors twice, left school for a year, then returned. My mother praised his determination. I worked nights at a warehouse and attended classes during the day. When I graduated, Mom congratulated me. Then she spent the rest of dinner discussing Derek's future plans. Little memories surfaced one after another as I sat there in the dark kitchen. Each one seemed insignificant on its own. Together, they formed a picture I could no longer ignore. Around midnight, I opened an old photo album we kept in the living room. Family vacations, holidays, birthday parties. In photograph after photograph, Derek stood in the center, smiling, celebrated, surrounded by attention. I noticed something else. I was usually there too, carrying supplies, setting up decorations, standing slightly off to the side. It was strange how clearly I could see it now. Not because the photographs had changed, but because I had. The next morning, Claire found me at the dining room table staring at one of the pictures. She sat beside me and looked down at it. It showed the four of us at a county fair nearly 20 years earlier. My mother had one arm around Derek. I stood next to them, holding a bag of souvenirs. Claire studied the photo for a moment before speaking. "You know," she said softly, "being responsible can become a trap." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" She smiled sadly. "People stop seeing what you give because they assume you will keep giving." Her words stayed with me long after she left for work. For years, I thought the problem was favoritism. That explanation seemed simple enough. But now I was beginning to suspect something deeper. Derek had spent his entire life being rescued, and everyone around him had helped build that reality. The question that troubled me was no longer why my mother favored him. The question was what that favoritism had turned him into. Over the next few weeks, life settled back into its usual rhythm, but something inside me had changed. Once you notice a pattern, it becomes impossible to stop seeing it. I began paying closer attention during family gatherings, phone calls, and casual conversations. Small things stood out that I might have ignored before. One Sunday afternoon, my mother invited everyone to her house for lunch. The weather was mild, and families filled the neighborhood with the sounds of lawn mowers and children playing basketball in driveways. Claire and I arrived carrying a homemade pasta salad. Derek showed up 20 minutes late in a luxury sport utility vehicle that looked brand new. My mother greeted him at the front door as though a celebrity had arrived. She hugged him tightly and immediately asked if he wanted something to eat. Nobody mentioned that Claire and I had spent the previous hour helping set up tables and chairs in the backyard. Again, I told myself it was not important, yet the feeling lingered. During lunch, the conversation naturally drifted toward work. A cousin asked Derek how business was going. Derek leaned back in his chair and smiled confidently. He spoke about investments, partnerships, and future opportunities. The details sounded impressive, but something felt rehearsed. Every answer seemed polished, vague, difficult to pin down. Whenever someone asked a direct question, he redirected the conversation toward another success story. People nodded anyway. They wanted to believe him. My mother certainly did. She listened with visible pride. Later that afternoon, while helping clear plates from the table, I overheard a conversation through the open kitchen window. My mother and Derek were standing on the patio. Their voices were low, but close enough for me to hear fragments. "Just a little more time," Derek said. "Everything is about to come together." My mother responded immediately. "I trust you." There was no hesitation in her voice. No questions, no concerns, just trust. A few minutes later, they noticed me carrying dishes and stopped talking. Derek smiled. My mother changed the subject. The exchange lasted less than 30 seconds, but it stayed with me for days. A week later, Claire and I visited my mother to help install a new water heater. While I was organizing tools in the garage, I noticed several unopened boxes stacked near the wall. They contained expensive furniture and decorative items. The delivery labels were recent. That surprised me. My mother had always been careful with money. She compared prices, clipped coupons, and repaired things rather than replacing them. Seeing thousands of dollars worth of new purchases felt unusual. "Did you redecorate?" I asked casually. She looked uncomfortable for a moment before smiling. "Just treating myself a little." The answer sounded rehearsed. Later that evening, Claire noticed it too. On the drive home, she stared out the passenger window for several miles. Before speaking, "Something feels different." I nodded. "I know. Do you think Derek is involved?" she asked. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "I do not know. But deep down, I suspected he was." The pieces still did not fit together. The new vehicle, the expensive purchases, the private conversations, the endless praise. None of it proved anything. Yet each detail added weight to a growing sense of unease. For years, I had assumed my brother's life was exactly what it appeared to be. Successful, stable, prosperous. Now, for the first time, I began wondering whether everyone in the family had been looking at an illusion. And if it was an illusion, I feared my mother had invested far more into it than any of us realized. The first real crack appeared about a month later. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon while I was at work. My phone rang just after 3 o'clock. The caller identification showed my mother's number. That alone was unusual. Helen rarely called during the day unless something needed immediate attention. When I answered, her voice sounded distracted. Not frightened exactly, but unsettled. She asked if I knew anything about a letter she had received from her bank. I told her I did not. There was a long pause before she explained that the bank wanted to schedule a meeting to review several accounts. The request seemed routine, but she sounded uncomfortable discussing it. I offered to stop by after work and take a look. She thanked me and quickly changed the subject. By the time I arrived at her house that evening, the sun was beginning to set. The familiar brick home looked exactly as it always had. The flower beds were trimmed. The porch light glowed softly. Yet the moment I stepped inside, I sensed tension. My mother was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers spread out in front of her. She immediately gathered them into a neat pile when she saw me. That small movement told me more than any words could have. Helen had never hidden financial documents from me before. I sat across from her and asked about the letter. She handed it over. The language was professional and polite. Nothing alarming. The bank simply wanted to review recent activity and discuss future planning. Still, something felt off. I asked whether there had been any major changes to her accounts. She hesitated, only for a second, but I noticed. Then she smiled and said everything was fine. The conversation drifted elsewhere. We talked about neighbors, weather, and an upcoming family barbecue. Yet throughout the evening, I kept catching her staring at the stack of papers beside her chair. It was as though the documents carried a weight she could not put down. Before leaving, I asked one more question. "Has Derek been helping you with finances?" Her expression changed instantly. Not anger, not guilt, defensiveness. "Your brother has been very supportive," she replied. The answer was carefully chosen. It did not actually address what I had asked. Driving home, I replayed the conversation in my head. The next few days only deepened my concern. During a family barbecue that weekend, Derek arrived later than everyone else. He stepped out of another new vehicle, this one even more expensive than the last. Several relatives gathered around to admire it. Derek laughed and accepted the compliments as though success followed him naturally. Meanwhile, I noticed something else. My mother seemed unusually eager to reinforce every story he told. If someone praised him, she added another example. If someone questioned a detail, she quickly defended him. It felt less like pride and more like protection. Then came a moment I could not forget. As people were leaving, I saw Derek and my mother standing near her garage. He handed her a folder. She glanced inside and immediately closed it. Neither of them noticed me watching from across the yard. The exchange lasted only seconds. Yet the look on her face stayed with me. It was not confidence. It was worry. For years, I had assumed Derek depended on my mother's admiration. Standing there that evening, I began to wonder if something more complicated was happening. What if my mother was no longer simply helping him? What if she had become responsible for keeping his entire image alive? The answer arrived when I was not looking for it. A few weeks after the barbecue, my mother asked, if I could help her organize some old storage boxes in the basement. It was a rainy Saturday, the kind of day when the sky stayed gray from morning until evening. Claire had plans with friends, so I drove over alone. Helen seemed relieved to see me. She greeted me warmly, made coffee, and led me downstairs. For the first hour, nothing unusual happened. We sorted through photo albums, holiday decorations, and old tax records. Dust floated through the beams of light coming from the small basement windows. It felt ordinary, familiar, the kind of quiet afternoon families share without thinking twice about it. Then my mother received a phone call. The moment she looked at the screen, her expression changed. "I need to take this upstairs," she said quickly. She disappeared before I could respond. I continued sorting papers by myself. A few minutes later, while moving a storage bin, I accidentally knocked over a folder that had been tucked behind a shelf. Documents slid across the floor. My first instinct was to gather everything and put it back. Then I noticed my mother's name on several pages. I froze. The papers appeared recent. Much more recent than the old records we had been organizing. I should have looked away. I know that. But something inside me told me to pay attention. The first page contained information about a home equity line of credit. I stared at the numbers, convinced I had misunderstood them. The amount was far larger than anything my mother had ever borrowed in her life. I turned to the next page, then another. The dates were spread across nearly 2 years. Several transactions stood out immediately. Large transfers, repeated withdrawals. The destination account information was partially visible. One name appeared again and again. Derek Carter. My stomach tightened. I sat down on an old folding chair and continued reading. The deeper I looked, the worse it became. This was not a single loan. This was a pattern, a long one. Money had been moving steadily from my mother's resources into accounts connected to Derek. Tens of thousands of dollars. Then more. I heard footsteps overhead and quickly gathered the papers. My hands felt strangely cold. By the time my mother returned, the folder was back where I had found it. She smiled as if nothing had happened. I smiled back. Neither of us mentioned the documents. But everything had changed. That evening, I drove home through steady rain. Windshield wipers moved back and forth while the numbers replayed in my head. Claire listened quietly as I described what I had seen. When I finished, she did not speak right away. Finally, she asked the question I had been avoiding. "Does your mother know how much she has given him?" I stared through the windshield. "I think she does." Saying it out loud hurt more than I expected. Because if Helen knew, then this was no longer a story about being manipulated. It was a choice she had made again and again. Yet even then, something still did not make sense. If Derek was as successful as everyone believed, why would he need so much money? Why would he keep taking more? And why did my mother look more worried every time his name came up? The answers were still hidden, but for the first time, I could see the outline of the truth forming beneath the surface. Whatever Derek had built, it was not standing on success. It was standing on my mother's sacrifice. After discovering the documents in my mother's basement, I stopped looking at Derek the same way. For most of my life, I had assumed he was fortunate. Now I began to wonder whether he was surviving on borrowed time. The difference mattered. A fortunate man builds something real. A man surviving on borrowed time builds something that eventually collapses. The weeks that followed gave me more reasons to question everything. Family members continued talking about Derek as if he were some kind of business success story. At cookouts, birthday dinners, and holiday gatherings, people repeated the same descriptions. Smart, ambitious, successful, connected. Yet whenever anyone asked specific questions, the answers never seemed to go anywhere. Derek always had a new project, a new opportunity, a new partnership. Somehow there was always excitement, but very little substance. One evening, Claire and I attended a charity fundraiser hosted by a local business association. We were surprised to see Derek there. He moved through the room confidently, shaking hands and exchanging business cards. From a distance, he looked exactly like the successful entrepreneur everyone believed him to be. But as the evening unfolded, I noticed something strange. Several conversations ended awkwardly. A few people smiled politely and walked away faster than expected. One man recognized me and quietly struck up a conversation near the buffet table. After learning I was Derek's brother, his expression shifted. "Small world," he said. "I have met your brother a few times." There was a pause. "Interesting guy." The choice of words caught my attention. Interesting was rarely a compliment when spoken that way. Before I could ask more, someone called him away. The conversation ended there, but the uneasy feeling remained. A few days later, another piece of the puzzle appeared. My cousin Rebecca called me unexpectedly. She normally avoided family drama, which made the call unusual from the beginning. After a few minutes of casual conversation, she lowered her voice. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Has Derek ever borrowed money from you?" I nearly dropped the phone. "No," I replied. "Why?" There was a long silence. Then she admitted that Derek had approached her husband months earlier about a short-term investment opportunity. He promised quick returns. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, just a business opportunity that supposedly needed temporary funding. Fortunately, Rebecca's husband declined. "Something felt off," she explained. After we hung up, I sat quietly in my office. The room felt smaller than usual. What bothered me was not the request itself. Business owners sometimes seek investors. That was normal. What bothered me was the pattern. My mother's money, the vague explanations, the constant need for support, the carefully maintained image. The more pieces I gathered, the less successful Derek appeared. He seemed trapped in a cycle that required constant reinforcement, like a stage actor performing in front of an audience that could never see behind the curtain. Late that night, I found myself staring at an old family photograph again. Derek stood in the center, smiling confidently. My mother stood beside him, looking proud. For years, I thought she was protecting him because she believed in him. Now I was beginning to suspect something far sadder. Perhaps she was protecting him because admitting the truth had become too painful. And if that was true, then the illusion was much larger than I had imagined. The collapse did not happen all at once. It arrived the way winter arrives in Ohio, slowly enough that people convince themselves the weather is still warm. Then one morning they wake up and everything has changed. The first public sign appeared during Thanksgiving. My mother insisted on hosting dinner despite the fact that she seemed more tired than usual. Claire and I arrived early to help. Helen smiled and welcomed us inside, but I noticed dark circles under her eyes. She moved more slowly than she had a year earlier. Even her voice sounded strained. Derek arrived nearly an hour late, carrying an expensive bottle of wine and a confident smile. To anyone else, he looked exactly the same. Successful, relaxed, in control. Yet I had started paying attention to details. His smile appeared forced. He checked his phone constantly. Several times he stepped outside alone. During dinner, conversation flowed easily until my cousin Rebecca mentioned local real estate prices. It was a harmless topic. At least it should have been. Then someone casually asked Derek whether he was still planning to purchase a larger property the following year. For a brief moment, he froze. The pause lasted only a second, but everyone noticed. Derek quickly recovered and launched into another explanation about market timing and investment strategy. People nodded. Most seemed satisfied. I was not. Neither was Rebecca. Later that evening, after dessert, a strange tension settled over the room. My mother kept glancing toward Derek. Derek kept checking his phone. Finally, the device rang. He stepped into the hallway to answer. The conversation was quiet, but not quiet enough. His voice suddenly changed. The confidence disappeared. In its place was frustration, then concern. Family members exchanged glances. Nobody said anything. When Derek returned, he forced another smile and claimed he needed to leave early because of a business matter. My mother stood immediately. "Is everything all right?" she asked. The question sounded less like curiosity and more like fear. Derek assured her everything was fine. Then he left. The room felt different after that. Conversations became shorter. Guests began gathering coats and leftovers. Within an hour, most people had gone home. Claire and I stayed behind to help clean. While loading dishes into the dishwasher, I noticed my mother staring out the kitchen window toward the empty driveway. She looked worried, deeply worried. "Mom," I said carefully, "is Derek in trouble?" She did not answer right away. Instead, she dried the same plate for nearly 30 seconds before placing it in a cabinet. Finally, she looked at me. For the first time in years, I saw uncertainty in her eyes. "Your brother has had some challenges," she said quietly. Challenges. The word felt absurd after everything I had discovered. Yet I could also hear something else beneath it. Exhaustion. She was tired. Tired of defending him. Tired of worrying. Tired of carrying burdens that never seemed to disappear. Driving home that night, I thought about her expression. Not once had she denied there was a problem. Not once had she defended Derek the way she normally did. The realization unsettled me more than anything else. Because if my mother was finally beginning to doubt him, then whatever was happening behind the scenes had become impossible to hide. And if it had become impossible for her to ignore, I feared the truth was far worse than any of us understood. December arrived with early snow and a silence that seemed to settle over the entire family. The usual stream of group messages slowed down. Holiday plans remained uncertain. Even my mother seemed less enthusiastic than normal. Every year, she was the first person to talk about decorations, recipes, and family traditions. This time, she sounded distracted whenever we spoke. A few days before Christmas, she called and asked if I could stop by. Her voice carried a seriousness I had never heard before. When I arrived, she was sitting alone at the kitchen table. No television, no music, just a folder resting in front of her. The house felt unusually quiet. I sat across from her and waited. For nearly a minute, neither of us spoke. Then she looked down at her hands and said something I never expected to hear. "I think I made a mistake." The words landed heavily between us. For years, I had imagined what it would feel like if my mother ever acknowledged the truth. I thought I would feel vindicated. Instead, I felt sad, deeply sad, because the woman sitting across from me no longer looked confident. She looked exhausted, older, like someone carrying a burden that had finally become too heavy. Slowly, she began explaining. Not everything, not yet, but enough. Derek had come to her repeatedly over the years with promises, temporary problems, short-term loans, investment opportunities, emergency situations that always seemed urgent. Each time he assured her that success was right around the corner. Each time she believed him. At first, she helped because she wanted to support her son. Later, she helped because she was afraid of what would happen if she stopped. As she spoke, tears gathered in her eyes. "I kept thinking the next time would fix everything," she whispered. I looked at the folder on the table. "What is in there?" I asked. She hesitated before sliding it toward me. Inside were financial statements, loan documents, and account summaries. The numbers were worse than I imagined. Much worse. I understood immediately why the bank had wanted to meet with her. Years of sacrifices had accumulated into a situation she could no longer control. My mother stared out the window at the falling snow. "I do not know what to do anymore," she admitted. That was the moment everything changed. For the first time in my life, she was not defending Derek. She was asking for help. Not money, not solutions. Help facing reality. A few days later, she invited Derek over. She asked me to be there. Claire came with me for support. The meeting took place in the same kitchen where countless family dinners had happened over the years. Derek arrived smiling, confident as always. At least at first. Then he saw the documents spread across the table. The smile faded. What followed was not a dramatic argument. It was something far more revealing. My mother calmly asked questions. Direct questions. Questions she should have asked years earlier. About debts. About missing money. About promises that never materialized. Derek answered some. Avoided others. Redirected whenever possible. Yet for the first time, Helen did not accept the explanations. She simply listened. The room felt different. The old pattern was breaking apart right in front of us. When the conversation finally ended, Derek left frustrated and unusually quiet. After the front door closed, my mother remained seated at the table. She looked tired, but something else had appeared in her expression. Clarity. The illusion she had protected for years was finally gone. And once the illusion disappeared, neither of us could pretend anymore. The months that followed were quieter than anyone expected. There was no dramatic showdown. No moment where everything suddenly returned to normal. Real life rarely works that way. Instead, the consequences arrived one decision at a time. My mother met with financial advisors. She reviewed every account, every document, and every obligation she had accumulated over the years. For the first time, she stopped making excuses. She stopped accepting promises in place of facts. The process was painful to watch. Some mornings, she sounded hopeful. Other days, she seemed overwhelmed by regret. Yet even during the difficult moments, I noticed something important. She was finally facing reality instead of running from it. Derek, on the other hand, struggled with the change. He called less often. Family gatherings became uncomfortable. The admiration he once relied upon was fading because people were beginning to ask questions. Not hostile questions. Simple questions. Honest questions. The kind that require real answers. And real answers were becoming difficult to provide. One afternoon in early spring, I met my mother for lunch at a small diner overlooking a river outside town. The trees were beginning to turn green again after a long winter. Helen looked older than she had a year earlier, but she also looked calmer. We sat in a booth near the window and talked for nearly 2 hours. At one point, she stared out at the water and quietly said, "I spent so much time trying to save him that I forgot I was losing myself." I did not know how to respond. There was nothing to argue with, nothing to fix, only the truth. She stirred her coffee slowly. "I thought love meant protecting someone from consequences," she continued. "Now I think real love means allowing them to face reality." Those words stayed with me long after lunch ended. Over time, the family adapted to a new normal. Some relationships grew stronger. Others became distant. Certain wounds healed. Others never fully disappeared. That is the part people rarely talk about. Not every story ends with complete reconciliation. Sometimes the victory is simply seeing things clearly. Sometimes peace comes from accepting what cannot be changed. One evening, nearly a year after my mother's birthday party, our family gathered again. The setting was smaller this time. No rented banquet room. No speeches. Just a simple dinner at my house. Claire prepared a meal. A few relatives stopped by. My mother sat at the table laughing with people she had not truly relaxed around in years. Watching her, I realized something. The constant anxiety that had followed her everywhere was finally beginning to fade. It was not gone completely, but it no longer controlled her. Later that night, after everyone left, I stood alone on the back porch. The air was cool and still. Through the kitchen window, I could see my mother helping Claire clear dishes. They were smiling about something. For a moment, the scene felt surprisingly ordinary. And perhaps that was the greatest change of all. I thought back to the night of her 75th birthday. The speech, the applause, the praise directed toward the son she believed would protect her future. For years, she chose him over everything else, including herself. In the end, the person she trusted most became the source of her greatest loss. Yet this story was never really about money. It was about illusion. About what happens when favoritism blinds us to reality. About the cost of believing what we desperately want to be true. My brother did not destroy our family in a single moment. The damage happened slowly, hidden beneath excuses and good intentions. And by the time the truth finally surfaced, there was no winner left to celebrate. There was only a family learning, one painful lesson at a time, that love without honesty can become its own kind of betrayal.